Hey, how's it going everyone? Welcome back to another video. Now in today's video we're going to be taking a look at how to make drum and bass in the style of Headex, Invaders and Alias's remix of Paper Planes. Now if you've not heard this remix, make sure you go and check it out. It's on Headex's SoundCloud, free download as well, so make sure you go and grab it because it is a banger of a remix. And yeah, it's got screechy basses in, some vocal samples from the original and really hard hitting drums. So yeah, we're going to be taking a look at how to make a bunch of these different elements. Now, before we get into the video, if you want to grab the project file for this video with all the presets and everything in, make sure you check out the link in the description, and you can also check out my Patreon whilst you're there, and you can also check out my website for one-to-one production lessons. But yeah, without any further ado, let's hop into FL. So here we are inside of FL. As always, we're set at 175 BPM, just standard BPM for drum and bass pretty much. And yeah, first of all, we're going to take a look at how to make the drums for this track. So as you can see, first of all, we just grabbed a kick sample. Now for this, we're going to go for a nice punchy, thick bass drum. You'll hear it's got quite a lot of click, this sample actually, but we're going to tone that down in a bit. But here's the sample I've gone with, first of all. Yeah, it's a dubstep kick, I believe. Actually, I'm just going to adjust the out because there's... Yeah, we're just going to tame the decay a bit, just so it's not so thumpy on the decay. And we can just make a simple pattern like this. Yeah, that's the basic kick pattern we're going to be going for this track. And I have also noticed that there's a bit of weird stereo going on, which I don't really want with this, so we're just going to whack it all the way to mono just there. Now, next up, I've just grabbed a simple clap sample. Like I said, very simple, not loads to it. If you know the remix well, you know this clap doesn't necessarily sound too much like what's in the remix that Headex did, but we're going to add some processing and stuff. So yeah, this is the standard clap and kick layout that we're going for. Like I said, very standard within these types of tunes, especially Headex tracks. But yeah, the processing in the clap and also the drum bus, which we'll get onto in a bit, will kind of make all the difference. But first of all, let's just add in the rest of the drums that we want for this. And then, as you can see here, I've just got this other hat now. This is like an open hat sample if we take a listen. A lot longer decay. Yeah, just works nicely as an open hat. And you can see where I've laid this out. So this first one is half the length of the second one. I've just added fades at the end of these just so it's a bit smoother. And yeah, we'll just take a listen to this. Yeah, I think that's kind of the main drum layout. We're going to change it a bit once we've got the bass pattern in there to kind of make them complement each other, and also the vocals. They all kind of work together. But yeah, let's have a look at the processing that we're going to add to the drums. So as you can see, I've just routed all the drums to individual tracks in the mixer here. And then I've routed all the drums to a drum bus as well, which has got some processing on. So if we go through each of these one by one and take a listen. So this is all the stuff kind of leveled, but without any effects. You can hear it's quite quiet at the moment, but we'll sort that in a bit. But first of all, we can have a look at this EQ on the kick. So very simple. Like I said, there was a lot of top end click in the kick drum, which kind of worked well, but it was a bit too much. So I've just toned that down a bit, well, quite a lot with this. Yeah, just tame the top end a bit. Then if we move on to the clap next, we've got quite a few effects on this. So we've got some reverb first, which is kind of adding a bit of stereo. Then we're just bringing that out even more with Trash 2, which is a great distortion plugin if you've never used it before. And then obviously that's going to introduce some low end that we don't want. So we've just kind of tamed that a bit there. Nothing crazy. And the clap stereo kind of sounds a bit weird, like the delay with the reverb, that kind of sound that you're getting at the moment, but it will make a lot more sense when it's within the whole mix. And then the only other processing I've done on the individual drum channels is just on this open hat, just ever so slightly tamed to the top end because it was just a little bit too much. And then on the drum bus itself, we're just using standard clip and we're absolutely punishing the drums. So I'll turn that back down so you don't all get deafened. And yeah, like I said, absolutely slamming the drums, loads of saturation, loads of gain, pushing everything, but that's the kind of sound that we're going for with this. If you take a listen to the drums in the remix, you can hear that they're all pushed super hard, distorted, crunchy, gritty, absolutely lovely. But yeah, now that we've got those bits sorted, I reckon that we can move on to the basses. So the first bass that we're going to be looking at is the main bass in the remix. It's that kind of like screechy main bass that you've got. So first of all, we can go ahead and on oscillator A, going to grab basic shapes. Let's turn this down one octave and then we're going to set it to this. And then we can also turn on oscillator B, and again we're going to set this to basic shapes, but this time we can turn this up 3 octaves and 5 semitones. Gives you a bit of a weird sound, but obviously we're going to be changing that up quite a lot. We can turn down the randomization on both. Just that kind of helps to keep stuff in phase or not changing. Then we can also turn down the level on oscillator B because we're just going to be using that for FM. So we just go back to that sound, and we can also set this to the wavetable position of 3. And like I said, it's not going to change anything yet, just because we don't have the FM turned on. So let's go ahead and activate this. And we're going to set this to just below 50%. You can hear it gives you such a scratchy, harsh sound, but that's the kind of thing we're going for. And then what we can also do is turn on the bend minus on here. Now, we're going to leave this all the way down at the moment, but we're going to make a shape just like this with LFO1. We'll set it to envelope mode, and then we'll set this to 1 bar, and we can assign it to this bend minus. And you can hear it kind of slightly changes the sound as it develops, but we're also going to go ahead in the matrix, like I say in every video. This can look super overwhelming. It's actually fairly simple once you wrap your head around it. So in here, obviously, you can just like assign these LFOs to any knob just by dragging it on. This is basically the same. It's just a bit more of a complicated looking interface. So the source is what you're using to modulate something else. So we're just using LFO1 at the moment. That's what we want to apply to something else. And we're going to use the master tune under global, and that will affect the tune, the pitch of everything inside Serum, all the oscillators, everything. And then we're just going to set this to -1, set it to go one way. And now if we take a listen, you can hear that pitch bend. So next up, inside of here, we're going to turn on the sub, whack this down 2 octaves, and we're going to turn the level down to about 1/4 of the way up. Maybe slightly more. But you can play around with that. And we're also going to add some noise, set this to direct out, so it's going to bypass all the effects that we're going to add. We can also turn this up to about here, just to add a bit of noise in, and then we can turn on the filter section. We're going to set this to high 12, which is inside here. And we're just going to turn this up ever so slightly. Now, the noise sounds a bit aggressive at the moment, but obviously when we add effects and other stuff, it won't be quite as weird sounding. But yeah, let's move into the effects section. So first of all, we're going to grab an EQ. We can whack that up here. We're just going to set it to a high cut, and then we're going to turn the Q down so it's nice and flat. We can pull this frequency back to about here, I reckon. Then we're going to add some distortion. And we can set this to diode 2 and turn this all the way up. And you can hear now we're starting to get a bit closer to the sound that we want. And then we're going to turn on hyper dimension, turn the mix down on this hyper section, turn the size down here. We're just going to turn this up a little bit, up to about here. And yeah, that's all of the stuff that we're going to be doing inside of Serum. So next up, we just need to add in some external effects in the mixer. So as you can see, I've routed the bass to a mixer channel just here, the one that says main bass, and there's a lovely blue color. And then I've just added some effects. So we're going to go through these one by one, see what we want to add. So first of all, we've just got this EQ, which is just kind of taming the low end a little bit. Now you might see we've got another EQ there, and that one is actually a complete low cut to get rid of all the low end, because we're going to lay a separate sub underneath. But basically, the reason for having this one here is because when you've got a sound and it has a bunch of low end and you're distorting it, like we're going to do in a second, the amount of sub going into it kind of affects how the distortion sounds. So you'll hear what I mean in a minute. Yeah, ever so slightly different with that until we turn on the distortion, which we can have a look at just here. So yeah, iZotope Trash 2, great distortion plugin. I'm just using the clip control setting under distort. We crank this up loads and turn down the gain a little bit. Yeah, you can hear the difference there between when it's off and when it's on. It's magnificent. And yeah, if I just show you what I mean here with the distortion and the low end taming with the EQ, you can hear it's just a little bit too distorted. And yeah, I mean, obviously you could just kind of lower the distortion level, but again, the sound you get is different by lowering the distortion level as opposed to lowering the low end a bit. It just gives you the kind of sound that we're aiming for here. And then we just have a proper low cut, because we're going to be layering a sub bass underneath, and this just kind of helps to clean everything up. And then we also just have some basic kick sidechain here, which will obviously be useful when we've got everything put together. And then what I've actually done for the sub bass, which I mentioned that we're layering underneath, is basically just clone the original Serum patch, which you can do inside of FL Studio. You just right click on it and press C, and you've cloned it. And then, yeah, what we need to make sure we have is basic shapes on a sine wave down to octaves. You can leave all this stuff where it is. I've just turned the FM down because it's not doing anything. Then you want to make sure that you still have this LFO for the pitch modulation. And that's very important because you want to make sure the subs pitch exactly matches the pitch of the main bass. Otherwise, because they're like quite long notes, you're going to get this weird phasing effect where they kind of go in and out of pitch with each other. And it's just going to sound really strange. And then in the effects section, the only thing we've got in here is some distortion. So if I turn this off, you might be able to hear that if you've got all right speakers or headphones. If I turn this on, you can hear it's just thickened it up so much. And we've just got the drive on about 55%. You want to make sure this is on diode 1, not diode 2, like we had on the last bass. And then just left the mix up all the way. And yeah, it's very simple. And then inside of the mixer, you can see the only thing we have on this is some kick sidechain. Sidechain the kick to the sub bass because obviously they're both quite subby instruments and we don't want them clashing. And then the final bass that we're going to be making for this is kind of like an 808 style bass. If you have a listen to the remix at the very start of the bar of the drop, you can hear there's a kick and then a very short 808 style bass coming in. So this is what we're going to make here. So first of all, we're going to assign this to basic shapes. Whack this down -2. Might as well turn that down. And then if we go onto this pencil here, you can basically kind of modify what you've got going on in the wavetable here. So at the moment, it's just a boring old sine wave. So we're going to turn this down all the way. And then we can just turn this up to about 37% I like. And you can hear it's just added in some more harmonics. And then what we're going to do is we're going to grab LFO1. We can just make a shape like this. And we can set it to envelope mode and leave it on quarter notes. And then we're just going to assign this to the coarse pitch. We go into here, we can just click here, and then it will only go up and down. And you can hear that just kind of adds like a bit of a bump at the start of the note. Very typical in an 808 bass. And then if we head into the effects section, first of all, we're going to turn on distortion. We might as well whack that up there. And again, we're going to go on to diode 1 and set this to 55, just like we've got on the sub bass. And we've got a lovely thick 808. And then we can just turn on the chorus. We want to make sure this is pretty subtle. So I'm going to turn the mix down to about here. We can turn that up a little bit. For a subtle bit of stereo, but obviously you don't want to go crazy on this because it's a low-end instrument. So if you're going mental with the stereo, you're going to get some weird stuff going on. Yeah, that's all there is to it for this 808 style bass. Very simple. And you can use this in loads of stuff. That actually sounds really cool. You can go ahead and steal that if you want. But now that we've got all those basses, we're going to make a basic pattern and whack a bunch of this stuff together. So first of all, actually, before making the bass pattern, I'm just going to mute these drums here. So if you don't know how I did that, you can just double right click. And when you drag, you can mute stuff or unmute it depending on which one you select first. But anyway, let's get into the basses here. So the first bass that we're going to be laying down here is the 808. So we can just have it on this third beat of the first bar. And like I said, we've got kind of the kick coming in here and then this very short 808 note. And it just works nicely like that. It's kind of like a quick call and response. So if we just go ahead and grab our screechy bass, we can just place it there and that's going to work nicely. And then we're also going to do the same with the sub bass. So literally an identical layer underneath. And you can see there's this gap here. We're going to add some vocals to this right now. Okay, so as you can see, I've just kind of tidied up the project a bit here. So I've just assigned these all to their individual channels. And we've got this main bass pattern, the one we just made. And then there's also this variation on it, which I'll come on to in a second. Then, like I said, we've got the vocal sample. So I literally just used an acapella extractor for this. Whacked on a little bit of OTT and then some kick side chain there as well. And then, yeah, we'll come on to this bit in a second. So actually, I'll just play this through so you can have a listen to how it sounds. Yeah, the Womp bass isn't exactly like what Headex has made because, I mean, that's kind of like his very signature style bass. So I wasn't exactly going to go and rip that off exactly. And also, it's pretty hard to make. But I just whacked in a Womp bass that I've used before. Make sure you go and check out the Womp bass tutorial video because you can see how to make basses like that in there. Yeah, that's basically everything for this video. If you have any questions at all about anything that I've covered or just any questions about any of this stuff in general, feel free to leave it as a comment. And as I mentioned at the start of the video, you can grab the project file with all the presets and everything for this down in the description. Make sure you check out my Patreon where you can get other cool stuff like this, dubs, sample packs, all that kind of stuff. and also make sure you check out my website if you want to get one-to-one production lessons. But yeah, thank you very much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.